So, you're a man with some years behind you. Maybe your 40s, maybe your 50s, even your 60s. You've lived, built, fought, and carried both wins and scars. And then, out of nowhere, a younger woman steps into your life. Radiant, overflowing with energy, a little untamed, a little mysterious. For reasons you can't quite explain, she directs her attention at you. Not just empty chatter, but genuine attention. And in that moment, whether you say it out loud or not, you begin to feel alive again, in a way you haven't for some time. It's flattering, it's thrilling, but it's also the exact place where so many men stumble into mistakes without even noticing. Number 1. Don't try to act her age. You're not her equal in years, and that's the truth. One of the biggest traps older men fall into when dealing with younger women is attempting to squeeze themselves into her world, copying her slang, mirroring her style, or pretending to keep up with her cultural references. It often begins with good intentions, the natural desire to connect and relate. But what ends up happening is the reverse. You strip away the very quality that made you interesting in the first place. The moment you start behaving like her peer, she no longer sees the grounded, seasoned, composed man in front of her. She sees someone straining to fit in. And no matter how subtle you try to be, she senses it. And even if you think you're pulling it off quietly, she can feel it. Women, especially younger ones, are finely tuned to detect authenticity. When an older man forces cool by imitating her lifestyle, it doesn't feel right. Not because of the age gap itself, but because of the insecurity behind it. The truth is, your age isn't a liability. It's your strength. You've lived through storms. You've stumbled, fallen, and gotten back up. You carry something she hasn't even begun to grasp yet. A depth, a calm presence, a weight that only comes from years in the trenches of life. That's what pulls her in. Not whether you can name the latest TikTok trend or drop a line from her favorite Netflix series. Yet too many older men believe they need to keep up, when in reality, the most magnetic thing you can do is slow down, stand steady, and let her youthful energy spin around you while you remain unshaken at the center. Let me paint a real-world picture. Imagine you're out on a date and she starts gushing over some 23-year-old influencer. Now, you could fake it, pretend you know him, chuckle along, maybe even pull out your phone to act like you follow him too. Or you could just smile and say, "I don't really keep up with that. I'm more into conversations that don't vanish in 24 hours. That one line, that's power. That's contrast. That's mystery. And it's exactly the kind of thing that throws her off guard in the best way possible. Not because you're trying to become her, but because you remind her that you're not. That's the paradox. The less you try to be relatable, the more magnetic you actually become. Another common mistake older men make is turning into her emotional sponge, soaking up all her chaos, confusion, and childhood baggage under the excuse of being supportive. It usually begins harmlessly. She starts sharing pieces of her story. Maybe an ex treated her poorly. Maybe her family was absent. Maybe she's in some phase of working on herself. And because you're seasoned, empathetic, and emotionally grounded, you listen. You want to help. You start thinking, just maybe, she sees in you something she can't find in guys her age. But little by little, you become her late-night lifeline, her therapist, the safe place she dumps her problems when life feels too heavy. And deep down, you convince yourself this is creating a bond. You believe that being the one who understands her means she'll eventually choose you. But the reality? That's not romance. It's emotional outsourcing. You see, younger women often, without realizing it, gravitate toward older men because they crave stability. But if you confuse emotional caretaking with attraction, you'll end up trapped in the most frustrating role possible, the friend zone disguised as intimacy. You'll be the one listening to stories about her poor decisions, her messy relationships, her mental breakdowns, yet none of it will translate into respect or desire. Why? Because a stoic man doesn't dive headfirst into chaos just to feel important. He brings calm simply by being calm. He listens, but he doesn't rescue. He offers perspective, but not self-sacrifice. There's a sharp line between being emotionally available and becoming emotionally absorbent. One is strength, the other is neediness, dressed up as kindness. Picture this. She calls you in tears, spilling drama from her latest situation. Most men rush in, desperate to fix it, but instead imagine you respond with, "That sounds heavy. I hope you give yourself some space to figure it out." Just one sentence, but it carries weight. It shows presence without entanglement. She feels acknowledged, but she can't drag you into the storm with her. That is stoicism in practice. It's not about being cold. It's about knowing the boundary between offering support and losing your peace. A man who has mastered himself doesn't get pulled off balance by someone else's storm, no matter how beautiful that storm may look on the surface. Now let's break down one of the quietest but deadliest mistakes older men make with younger women: chasing her validation. It rarely looks like desperation in the beginning. In fact, it usually starts small. You throw out just one more compliment than necessary. You linger too long waiting on her replies. You bend your standards ever so slightly just to hold her interest. You adjust your tone, water down your truth, all in pursuit of one thing: her approval. But here's the reality. The moment you need her validation, she begins to lose interest. You stop being the man and you start playing the role of performer. Instead of leading, you're pleasing. Instead of standing firm, you orbit her moods like a moon clinging to a planet, desperate for gravity. That's not attraction, that's erosion. And for a younger woman who is still shaping her identity, this quickly morphs into a game of power. She may not do it consciously, but she instinctively senses when your center is off balance. She feels when you're bending instead of standing. And instead of admiring your flexibility, she tests you harder, pulling back, going cold, just to see if you'll chase. Respect is never won by being agreeable. It's earned by being centered. Stoicism teaches that a man's worth isn't rooted in the opinions of others, but in how firmly he stands in his own. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Flip that. The moment you stop living for her applause, you regain your power. Let's get practical. Imagine you're texting a younger woman. She takes 5 hours to respond. You notice, but you don't panic. You don't double text. You don't send a random meme to force her attention back. Instead, you keep moving, training, building, living your mission. If she circles back, fine. If she doesn't, you still win, because you never compromised your center. That's what makes validation chasing so dangerous for older men. Your value doesn't lie in being entertaining or fun. It lies in being grounded, steady, unshakable. That's the contrast she feels, your calm stillness against her unpredictable curiosity. Here's the deeper issue. Many older men chase validation because they fear becoming irrelevant. Society whispers, "You're too old to compete." So when a younger woman shows interest, they overinvest, clinging to her as if she's their last chance. But that's not truth, it's scarcity. You're not missing out on opportunity, you're dodging a trap. The worst part? Chasing her approval leads to self-betrayal. You start laughing at jokes that aren't funny. You nod along with ideas you don't believe. You tolerate behavior that violates your standards, all to keep the peace. But peace purchased at the cost of your identity isn't peace, it's erasure. And women feel that, especially younger women. They're drawn to older men not because they bend, but because they don't. Because they set the tone by their energy, not their compliance. Take Tom, for example. He's 48, divorced, successful. He started seeing a 28-year-old. At first, sparks were everywhere. But Tom began overcompensating, planning extravagant dates, showering her with compliments, softening his views just to avoid conflict. And slowly, she began to pull away, less engaged, less respectful. Finally, she told him, "I just don't feel that spark anymore." What she meant was simple. He'd lost his edge. After the breakup, Tom recalibrated. He stopped performing. He returned to his discipline, expanded his business, sharpened his mission. Months later, she reached out. But this time, Tom wasn't the same man. He didn't need her validation, and she could feel it. That's the power of Stoic strength in action. You don't need her to agree. You don't need her to stay. You don't even need her to notice. You only need to stay centered. And when you do, she'll either rise to meet you or she'll fall away. Either way, you win. Number 4. Don't focus on impressing her. Lead instead. You're not here to win her over with tricks. Let that settle for a moment, because almost everything in modern dating shouts the opposite. Fancy restaurants, witty texting strategies, rehearsed lines. What can I say to make her like me? But if you're an older man engaging with a younger woman, chasing her approval by trying to impress is the very thing that weakens your presence and robs you of your edge. Here's why. The second you shift from leading to impressing, You step out of your masculine frame and into performance mode. She becomes the judge, and you become the contestant. That tiny shift changes everything. Suddenly you're not holding the frame, you're asking her to. The dinner reservations you scramble to book, the new shirt you buy just hoping it'll catch her eye, the compliment you overthink before sending, she feels all of it. Not in the details, but in the energy. And that energy says, I hope this is good enough. That isn't attractive. That's insecurity. Now, don't get it wrong. Leadership isn't about control. It's not about barking orders or acting superior. It's about direction, stability, presence. And when you're with a younger woman, especially one used to emotional chaos from men her age, what she secretly craves is someone who doesn't waver, someone who moves forward without applause, someone who doesn't need validation to stay on course. That's what leadership feels like. Leading isn't about being loud. It's about being decisive. It's saying, let's do this, instead of nervously asking, what do you want to do? It's moving with certainty, not arrogance. You don't request permission to be masculine. You embody it. Let's flip it with a real example. Imagine you meet a younger woman for coffee. Most older men launch into performance mode, talking about careers, cars, travels, trying to wow her with stories. You don't. You sit calmly grounded. You ask about her values. You listen, not to win or to prove, but to actually connect. You don't lean on flash. You lean on presence. And what happens? She leans in. Not because you tried to impress her, but because you didn't. That's leadership. That's masculine gravity. Stoicism has been teaching this for centuries. Epictetus once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because the Stoic man doesn't live for the approval of others. He lives by his own principle. The same applies here. You don't shapeshift to match her desires. You stay aligned with your own path. If she resonates with that, great. If not, you keep moving. Here's what most men forget. Your role isn't to dazzle her. It's to reveal who you are through how you act. Your tone, your composure, your ability to hold eye contact and say no without flinching. That's leadership. That's masculine energy. It doesn't shout, but it leaves a lasting impression. And leadership isn't just about decisions. It's emotional leadership too. When she gets emotional, you remain calm. When she pushes boundaries, you enforce them. When she tries to stir drama, you disengage, not to punish, but because peace is your standard. That is leading. That's showing her something rare, a man she can trust, even when she's unsure of herself. The men who chase impressions may catch her attention for a night. The men who lead stay etched in her mind for months, because they gave her an experience of polarity. The solid, grounded strength of masculinity that never asked for approval. So stop practicing lines. Stop Googling tricks. Stop trying to win her like a prize. You're not auditioning. You're the frame. Lead. Number 5. Don't project long-term fantasies too soon. You meet her. She's young, stunning, and giving you signals of interest. And instantly, your mind races ahead. What if this turns into something real? You start picturing trips together, dinners with her family, maybe even a wedding. You imagine what it would be like to have someone this vibrant standing next to you for years to come. Scenes play out in your head, none of them real, but the emotional investment you're making, that's already very real. And that's the danger. The moment you begin projecting a future onto her too early, you stop seeing her as she is and start seeing her as you wish she would be. You switch from observing to imagining. And once you do that, you blind yourself. Every red flag gets minimized. Every mismatch in values becomes something we'll work through. You start explaining away behavior that doesn't fit because you're already attached to the fantasy. And make no mistake, she feels it. Not necessarily in your words, but in your energy. She feels the weight of your expectation. She feels the rush. And for a younger woman, that pressure doesn't feel romantic, it feels suffocating. She didn't ask to be your forever. She's still figuring out if she even likes you beyond the surface. The Stoics warned about this exact trap. Epictetus said, when you are about to put your hand to something, remind yourself what it is. Dating isn't about building castles in your imagination. It's about collecting data, watching patterns, noticing behaviors, observing reality. Especially in the early stages, your role isn't to fantasize about where it could go, but to pay close attention to where it is. When you project too far ahead, you lose the one thing that matters most, presence. And presence is everything. You miss key signals. You ignore obvious patterns. You tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or immaturity, all because you're clinging to a future version of her that doesn't even exist yet. And here's what happens when you do this. You overcommit. You sacrifice too quickly. You adjust your schedule, abandon priorities, skip workouts, cancel plans with friends, all to keep alive this fantasy you've built in your head. But potential is not reality. Patterns are reality. If her actions show flakiness, immaturity, or selfishness today, that's who she is right now. And no projection changes that. Hope isn't the problem. But unchecked hope turns into delusion. And for an older man, that delusion costs more than it does for a younger one. You're not just risking feelings, you're risking time, energy, and mission. That's too high a price to gamble away. Take Dean, for example. He's 52, successful, emotionally intelligent. He met a playful, magnetic woman in her mid-20s. Within 2 weeks, he told his friends, "I think she could be the one." He started rearranging his life around her, skipping business trips, reorganizing finances, shifting priorities, all while she gave him mixed signals. She'd cancel last minute, disappear for days, contradict herself. And instead of confronting it, Dean romanticized it. He told himself, she just needs time. 3 months later, she was gone. No closure, no explanation. Dean was crushed, but he wasn't grieving her. He was grieving the fantasy he built in his own mind. That's the trap of projection. It builds castles in the air that reality can never support. The Stoic approach? Stay grounded. Stay curious, but don't commit too soon. Watch her patterns, not her potential. Slow down emotionally, even if the chemistry feels strong. Don't picture 10 years together until you've seen how she handles stress, conflict, and disappointment. Because attraction is easy. Compatibility? That's tested. So instead of rushing into fantasy, focus on the present. Watch how she behaves today. That's where the truth lies. Number 6. Don't let yourself become her backup plan or emotional filler. Here's a reality most men hate to face. Sometimes, you're not her main choice. You're the just-in-case, the maybe. The emotional safety net she leans on when the man she actually wants isn't available. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake that for real interest. She'll text when she's bored. She'll call when she's sad. She'll flirt just enough to keep you hanging, but she'll never fully commit. One day she's warm, the next she disappears for a weekend, only to come back like nothing happened. And you tell yourself she's busy, she's figuring things out. But deep down you know, you're not her priority. You're her convenience. That's the most dangerous role a man can play. Because women don't truly fall for men they can lean on like a crutch. They fall for men they can look up to. If she knows you'll always be there, no matter how little she gives in return, she stops valuing you. Not because she's cruel, but because people naturally devalue what's too easy, especially when it costs them nothing. Stoicism teaches us to honor ourselves by withdrawing from anything that dishonors our standards. Seneca put it simply, associate with those who will make a better man of you. The reverse is also true. Avoid those who reduce you to half your strength. And becoming a backup plan is exactly that, a silent erosion of your masculinity. You start shrinking, becoming agreeable, less honest, filtering your truth so she doesn't walk away. You keep showing up, hoping she'll finally see your worth. But here's the paradox. She'll never see your worth while you're busy making yourself small. Respect comes when you set boundaries, and mean them. Take Paul, for instance. He was 47, talking to a magnetic 26-year-old. They had chemistry, but she never made things official. She'd ghost for days, then call him crying about another guy. And Paul always answered. He thought being supportive would eventually win her over. But to her, he was just the man she could use to process her emotions until someone else came along. At one point, she even said, "You're like my safe place." It sounded sweet, but Paul realized it wasn't romantic. It was convenient. That night, he cut things off. And 3 months later, she reached back out, this time with a very different tone. Why? Because Paul was no longer her safety net. He had reclaimed his position as a man with standards. That's the truth. You don't become desirable by being endlessly available. You become desirable by being selective with your energy. You're not here to be her rebound, her placeholder, or the man she vents to about the one she actually wants. You're here to embody your worth. So what does this look like in practice? If she only calls you when she's upset but never when she's happy, pull back. If she only texts when she's lonely but avoids commitment, stop replying. If she treats you like an emotional sponge, absorb nothing. Let it roll off. You don't need to block her. You don't need to argue. Just remove the privilege of your presence, quietly, firmly, without drama, because your energy is not cheap. Women don't regret losing the man who was always waiting around. They regret losing the man who knew his value and walked away when things were unbalanced. That's the Stoic way. Calm, clear, detached. And if she circles back, it won't be because you begged. It will be because your absence spoke louder than your constant availability ever did. Number 7. Never abandon your mission for her. This is the moment where many strong men quietly collapse. Not when she ignores you, not when she tests you, but when things start to feel good. When the connection feels deep, the chemistry is strong, and you begin to tell yourself, maybe she's worth bending for. And little by little, you start shifting. You skip a gym session. You put off a work goal. You delay that business idea. You spend less time with your brothers and more time glued to your phone. You start rearranging your path to make space for her comfort. At first, it feels harmless, even romantic. But here's what's really happening. You're stepping off your mission. And that's where the downfall begins. Because younger women don't actually want to become your mission. What they want is to step into the life of a man who already has one. They want to feel safe with a man who's already moving forward, already building, already leading himself. They want to be part of your fire, not the reason you extinguish it. Masculinity has never been about control. It's about direction. The clearer and stronger your direction is, the more magnetic you become. When you stay focused on your purpose, your work, your discipline, your growth, she feels it. She might test you, she might challenge your priorities, but deep down, she respects you for holding the line. Even if she won't say it out loud. The Stoics lived this truth. Marcus Aurelius never asked for permission to follow his path. He stayed the course. He said a man's worth is no greater than his ambitions. So ask yourself, what happens when you trade your ambition for comfort? You become forgettable. A man without a mission isn't leading. He's waiting to be replaced. He becomes emotionally dependent, reactive, tied to her moods. And once she feels that shift, once she realizes she is the center of your energy, she loses interest, or worse, she loses respect. Look at Jordan's story. He was 45, a high-level executive who built a company from nothing. Then he met a woman in her mid-20s. Brilliant, fun, beautiful. She challenged him, and he liked it. But over time, he began shifting. He skipped business trips, changed his mornings to match her late-night schedule, delayed an investment because things were getting serious. From the outside, it looked like love, but inside he was drifting. He was losing focus, losing edge, and eventually he lost her. Why? Because she no longer felt his leadership. He wasn't the man building, moving forward, alive with purpose. He had become a passenger in his own life. That's how attraction dies. Not because you fail, but because you forgot what made you powerful in the first place. Never confuse love with surrender. If she's truly right for your life, she won't want you to abandon your mission. She'll want you to pursue it harder. She'll want to see you focused, disciplined, chasing growth. If she walks away because you refuse to put her above your purpose, let her go. Because here's the truth. A man who stays on mission, who keeps building, who keeps showing up, never runs out of options. But the man who abandons that to make space for someone who doesn't even value it, he runs out of himself. So stay locked in, wake up on time, take the trip, invest in your vision, train even when you don't feel like it. Speak your truth even when she pushes back. Let her feel the gravity of a man who will not bend for comfort. That's what inspires her. That's what makes her respect last. That's what separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. If you're finished giving your soul to anyone who flashes a smile, then that's it, brother. You're already ahead of the pack. If you've made it this far, you're not like most men. You're not chasing shallow attention or playing surface-level games. You're here to lead, to grow, to master yourself. And that's exactly why this channel exists. So tell me, what's the biggest mistake you've made in the past with younger women that you refuse to repeat again? Drop it in the comments below. And if today's message hit where it needed to, hit subscribe. Not just to watch, but to walk this path alongside other men doing the same work.